Welcome back to Zero to Hero. Today we're back with another comprehensive match analysis. We're taking a look at one of the top 8 matches from the recent Milwaukee 2026 Regional. We find none other than Wolfe Glick facing off against Leonard Craft III. Wolfe Glick needs no introduction and is arguably the best player of all time. Leonard, however, is a bit of a lesser known player, but still a very strong one. You may have heard of his online moniker TheDelybird, and he's put an immense amount of research into Pokemon mechanics, and a lot of our knowledge of niche interactions and mechanics is thanks to him. He's not yet won a regional, but does have notable top placements. He finished top 4 at Indianapolis 2024, top 8 at Peoria 2024, Indianapolis 2022, and the 2016 US National Championships, top 16 at Atlanta 2025 and NAIC 2023, as well as top 12 in the Players' Cup 4 back from 2021 in Sword and Shield. It's safe to say he's been around the block once or twice. If you're new to the series, here we take high-level VGC matches and break them down, giving a turn-by-turn analysis, but before that, we recap the players, analyze the teams, and the matchups. While we do our turn-by-turn analysis, we consider why players make the plays that they do, and consider other possibilities that they could have made. Just before we get into the teams, make sure to subscribe and leave a like if you want to see more of this type of content. Let's take a look at Wolfe's team first. As Wolfe tends to do, he's running an incredibly unique team, and not one I've ever seen played before. It has Gholdengo, Ursaluna Blood Moon, Incineroar, Whimsicott, Dragonite, and Hisuian Zoroark. It's a mix between balance and offense, but does lean more towards offense. You likely noticed the standout Pokemon on the team, Hisuian Zoroark. And don't worry, we'll get to it, but we'll look over some of the other more common Pokemon on the team first, as discussing what their roles are will make Hisuian Zoroark's role on the team more clear. Wolfe's EV spreads have not been released publicly, so we don't have them for his team. First up is Gholdengo. It's currently the Pokemon to beat in Reg H, and Wolfe's set is incredibly standard. Only 2 of Wolfe's Pokemon this time around have standard sets, so we'll cover them first. Make It Rain, Shadow Ball, Nasty Plot, and Protect make up its moveset, with the most common Terra type being Water. This is great defensively, giving it a fire resistance, and removing its Ground, Ghost, and Dark weaknesses. Metal Coat is also quite common. Not as much damage as Life Orb, but it does increase Gholdengo's longevity, not needing to take recoil damage. And it still does make its Make It Rains hit pretty hard. Ursaluna Blood Moon is the other Pokemon with a standard set. It's running Blood Moon, Hyper Voice, Earth Power, and Protect, with a Life Orb and Terra Normal. Terra Normal is very common as it lets these normal type attacks hit incredibly hard, and it removes its Grass, Ice, and Water weaknesses, which are all pretty common in this format. Although we don't have EV spreads, it is very likely this is a Turbo Bear set, running max special attack and max speed. The reason we know this is partially due to the next Pokemon, Whimsicott. The premier Tailwind setter of the format with Prankster, it's no wonder Wolfe has it as his primary form of speed control. This set has a couple less common tech choices that make a big difference in having it fit well on the team. Covert Cloak and Tailwind are nothing unusual. Encore and Moonblast are also quite common, but Fake Tears here is the most impactful, less common choice. Fake Tears lowers the target's special defense by 2 stages, making them incredibly vulnerable to special attacks. Thanks to Prankster, this move also has priority, allowing Whimsicott to move first, weakening a foe, then allow Gholdengo, Ursaluna, or even Zoroark to follow up with huge damage. Its Terra type of Fire is also very uncommon for Whimsicott currently. This is also a solid defensive Terra type, as it changes its weaknesses to Fire, Ice, and Steel, all into resistances. Although again, we don't have EV spreads for the team, based on his Terra type and some of the interactions in the match, we can determine this is very likely a bulky Whimsicott. Now for the star of the show, Hisuian Zoroark. This is a very niche Pokemon, but the format of Regulation H is the perfect place for it to see success. Let's cover the set first, then explain why it's great on the team and the format. The only ability it gets is Illusion, and its moves include Bitter Malice, Icy Wind, Taunt, and Protect, and it has a Terra type of Ghost while holding the Focus Sash. The ability Illusion makes Zoroark disguise itself when it's sent out on the field as the Pokemon that was selected last in Team Preview, meaning it can disguise itself as any Pokemon on the team. This disguise will be removed once it takes damage from an attack. To both the user and the opponent, it appears as the Pokemon it's disguised as in-game until this happens. With a speed tier of 110, this Pokemon is able to outspeed many of the threats in this format, and with Icy Wind, it serves as a decent form of speed control for the team. Bitter Malice, while dealing less damage than something like Shadow Ball, does lower the target's attack by 1 stage, allowing this Pokemon not only to lower their opponent's speed, but their attack as well. Taunt is great for shutting down opposing forms of speed control, like Tailwind on slower Pokemon, like Dragonite or Pelipper for example, and it can shut down other support Pokemon like Redirectors and Trick Room Setters. Having Taunt on a fast, non-Prankster Pokemon is great, as it can still taunt Dark types, which would be immune to a Prankster boosted taunt, and it can taunt while Psychic Terrain is up, again something that would block Prankster boosted taunts. So why is this Pokemon able to have success in Reg H? Well, its normal Ghost typing is incredible, as it gives an immunity to 3 types, Normal, Fighting, and Ghost, all of which are very common in this format. Fake Out, a normal type move, is incredibly common on Incineroar, Rillaboom, and Sneasler. Fighting attacks from Sneasler, Archaludon, and Annihilate are also common, and Ghost attacks from Goldengo, Annihilate, and Basculegion, again, are all very common. Having all these immunities from common types is good in its own right, but being able to disguise itself as Pokemon that are weak to those types puts a huge guessing game onto the opponent as to what they should actually click into it. For example, if Zoroark illusions itself as Ursaluna, which is weak to fighting, the opponent sees Ursaluna and they will be inclined to hit it with something like a close combat, something that Zoroark is immune to. An astute opponent will avoid going all in on these moves. But even the threat of Zoroark on the team really de-incentivizes the opponent from using these moves at all, giving you a huge advantage, since your opponent will have so many options off the table. And of course, nobody wants their Ursaluna to be hit by a close combat, so de-incentivizing your opponent from using it when you actually have Ursaluna on the board is a big advantage. Next up is Incineroar. The tried and true Pokemon sees an incredibly unique set on Wolfe's team. Although there's only one change from the status quo, it makes a huge difference in how Incineroar is used on this team. It has the standard Intimidate, Fake Out, Parting Shot, Knockoff, and Flare Blitz, along with Terra Ghost, and that part is as standard as it gets. But its item is the standout trait, the Mirror Herb. This item is consumed when an opponent has 1 or more of their stats raised. When this happens, the holder copies the stat changes by consuming the item. Mirror Herb is incredibly niche, as it only works if your opponent has a way to raise their stats, and you have Incineroar on the field when that happens. You may have noticed that the team is rather weak to Kingambit, having 2 ghost types already, with a plethora of stat-reducing options like Intimidate, Fake Tears, Icy Wind, and Bitter Malice. All of these will either make Kingambit stronger with its Defiant, or will have no effect at all. And a super strong Kingambit with access to Priority Damage and Sucker Punch can completely circumvent this team's speed control and take over the game. That's where Mirror Herb Incineroar comes in. If Incineroar faces down Kingambit, it will trigger Kingambit's Defiant, giving it +1 attack, but Incineroar will use its Mirror Herb to get +2 attack, because Defiant actually raises attack by 2 stages, but the Intimidate leaves Kingambit at +1, while Incineroar gets +2. This will allow Incineroar to completely one-shot it with a +2 Flare Blitz, and it will help it pick up one-shots on many other Pokemon, or just deal huge damage with Flare Blitz or Knockoff. It can also improve its bulk when playing against Pokemon like Sneasler, who often run a Grassy Seed or Psychic Seed for an Unburdened boost. With a defense boost from copying a Grassy Seed, and Sneasler at -1, depending on the investment, it is possible for close combat to become a 3-hit KO, or at least a roll to 2-hit KO, making this Incineroar incredibly good into many things that typically counter it. Dragonite is the last Pokemon on this team, and the one that seems to have the least synergy. It's a loaded dice set running Scale Shot and Multiscale. But unlike most other loaded dice sets, which opt for Haze and Tailwind, Wolfe chose Extreme Speed and Low Kick. He already has plenty of speed control with Whimsicott and Zoroark, so another Tailwind isn't needed, while his matchup into setup Pokemon and Dondozo is already solid with Encore and Taunt, so Haze is less necessary for those matchups. Extreme Speed is great for some access to priority damage to pick up weakened foes, or soften them up and allow his special attacking threats to finish them off later. Low Kick is another way to easily remove Kingambit, as well as deal big damage to other strong threats, particularly things like opposing Ursaluna and even Tyranitar. Multiscale Dragonite is also quite susceptible to Fake Out, giving Zoroark another Pokemon it can benefit from disguising as. Let's take a look at Leonard's team. He's running Rillaboom, Mousehold, Dragonite, Goldengo, Annihilate, and Blood Moon Ursaluna. This team also falls into the balance category, but more so leans towards bulky offense. With 5 offensive threats, all of which are pretty bulky and have middling speed tiers, it really does push this team into bulky offense rather than pure balance. but it still has quite a few tools similar to how balance functions. Before we look at his Pokemon, he has posted a very in-depth team report on his own channel, so please check that out if you're interested. This team is quite a bit of fun to pilot as well, so feel free to give it a shot. I won't cover every single thing that he did, as that would just be redundant, but I will bring out the biggest points. He did release his EV spreads, which is great for us, so huge shout out to Leonard for the team report, and all the work he does for the community behind the scenes. Again, make sure to check out his team report, I'll link it in the description. Let's get things started with Mousehold, as it enables many of the other options on the team. This is a fully supportive Mousehold, with Friend Guard, Follow Me, Beat Up, Super Fang, and Protect. It's a great support Pokemon to pair with most of these bulky threats. Goldengo and Annihilape can set up next to it, with Bulk Up or Nasty Plot, while Rillaboom, Dragonite, and Ursaluna all greatly benefit from Friend Guard and Follow Me, allowing them to be incredibly bulky. Of course, the classic Mouse-Ape combo holds up with a self-beat up into Annihilape, powering up its Rage Fist. Terra Ghost is great for fighting and fake out immunity, while the Focus Sash guarantees it can redirect at least 2 attacks for 1 turn, allowing an ally to set up. This EV spread is running max speed, as Mousehold wants to be as fast as possible, particularly to outspeed Pokemon it's just barely faster than, like Alola Ninetales, and in this case Hisuian Zoroark. And the defensive investment is primarily to survive scale shots from Dragonite, even if it lands 5 hits or crits one of its 4 hits. Let's take a look at Annihilape next. This is a very typical Mouse-Ape Annihilape. Running Defiant with a Citrus Berry and Terra Fire, it wants to be next to Mousehold to gain Rage Fist procs from a self-beat up. Terra Fire also gives it an immunity to being burned and having its damage cut in half. Along with Rage Fist, we see Bulk Up, Drain Punch, and Protect. Bulk Up not only increases the longevity, but also its offense, and using Drain Punch really leans into the bulky aspect, compared to something like Close Combat, which would lower its defenses. This EV spread was made for general bulk, but still includes maximum speed and is jolly. This is significant, as it wants to always outspeed slower Pokemon that threaten it, like Goldengo, Basculegion, Dragonite, and more, while still at least speed tying opposing Annihilapes. Goldengo is our next Pokemon. It has almost the exact same set as Wolf's, with Make It Rain, Shadow Ball, Nasty Plot, and Protect, with Terra Water, but the one difference is it's running Life Orb over Metal Coat, which means Leonard's Goldengo will hit much harder with Shadow Ball at the cost of some HP. The Grassy Terrain recovery from Rillaboom can help offset this recoil damage. Both Annihilape and Goldengo really benefit from Mousehold's Follow Me, as they're both weak to ghost attacks, while Mousehold is immune to it, so it can redirect these, keeping its partner completely safe and taking no damage itself. Max speed is all but necessary in this format to at least speed tie opposing Goldengos, since it's so common, and this amount of bulk is optimal for Life Orb recoil. But more importantly than that, it survives some specific attacks like Ursaluna Blood Moon Earth Power when next to Mousehold with Friend Guard, and it survives Terra Electric Archelodon Electroshot. It will also survive a high horsepower and Grassy Glide combo from Rillaboom, providing you get at least 1 turn of Grassy Terrain recovery. Just this little bit of extra bulk on Goldengo can often swing sets, as your opponent might think they have a one-shot on it, but they actually don't. Ursaluna is a very different set from Wolf's. Again, leaning into the bulky offense team style, this Ursaluna holds an Assault Vest and is running Terra Water. It has the typical Blood Moon, Hyper Voice, and Earth Power, but carries Vacuum Wave in its last slot since it can't run Protect. Keep in mind that Ursaluna's Mind's Eye ability allows it to hit ghost types not only with its normal moves, but fighting moves as well. This gives this slow, bulky threat priority damage, and priority damage that can not only hit ghost types, but one that hits steel types super effectively. This is particularly useful against Pokemon like Goldengo. This Ursaluna has very specific defensive calcs. Primarily, it will survive modest Blood Moon from opposing Life Orb Ursalunas, and it will survive Jolly Sneasler close combats almost all of the time, as well as some other things like Weather Ball Pelipper in the rain. The speed tier was noted to outspeed opposing Annihilape once you have Tailwind up with Ursaluna. This set, however, was meant to be generally bulky, and it serves that purpose perfectly. Rillaboom cannot run its most common item in the Assault Vest since it's taken by Ursaluna. Its moveset, however, is very standard for the format still, with Fake Out, Grassy Glide, Wood Hammer, and High Horsepower. Its Terra type in Fire is also standard, however it's running a Meadow Plate in its item slot, making its grass attacks hit incredibly hard. Looking at its EV spread, it's also running Max Attack Adamant. Giving this team 2 strong priority moves is incredibly useful. Thanks to this high attack investment and a damage boosting item, it picks up KOs on things like Terra Water Goldengo, Basculegion, and opposing Blood Moons. Dragonite is the last Pokemon on the team, and is running the most standard Dragonite set in the format. Multi-scale with loaded dice, Scale Shot, Tailwind, Haze, and Protect. It also runs Terra Fairy, mainly for the matchup into other Dragon types. Multi-scale adds a lot of bulk to the bulky offense archetype. Tailwind gives the team access to some speed control, and Haze can shut down opposing setup Pokemon, as well as cripple Dondozo. Dondozo is actually a huge weakness for the setup aspect of this team, with Gholdengo and Annihilape, and it was listed as one of the main reasons for even adding Dragonite to this team, as its unaware ability makes setup completely useless against it. You may have noticed this Dragonite is not running max attack, as most Dragonite do. Leonard goes incredibly in depth as to why 212 attack is still very sufficient for picking up most KOs. He also again goes very in depth on all of these EV spreads, so please check out his video as to why he made these EV spreads the way he did. But for our case, it's adding extra bulk while not sacrificing much offense. So with the teams down pat, what are the game plans of the teams? Wolf's team does center around Zoroark, as it's meant to be the star of the show, and Wolf brought it to almost every game that was shown on stream. With the other normal and ghost types on his team, Zoroark can easily be disguised as Gholdengo or Ursaluna, to bait the opponent into using fighting or ghost attacks, only for them to whiff, not knowing if it was Zoroark or not. In that window of just one turn whiffed by your opponent, Wolf can gain a huge advantage by setting up with Gholdengo, or just sweeping right away, while providing speed control with Icy Wind from Zoroark at the same time. Sometimes he would lead the disguised Zoroark game 1 just to fake out his opponents, and then game 2 bringing something like Ursaluna and Whimsicott. Once your opponent has been conditioned to expect the Zoroark, and then you don't bring the Zoroark, you can pick up KOs very quickly with that Terra Normal Blood Moon. This really plays a lot of mind games with the opponent, and it can take, again, just one turn of wiggle room provided by Zoroark to secure a big advantage, or an early KO, or gain speed control. And Wolf, with his amazing positioning, can take this small advantage and run with it. As for Leonard's team, due to the bulky offense nature of it and the setup options, using Mouse Hold is one of the primary game plans of the team. Combining it with Gholdengo or Annihilape to set up, again, is the primary win condition. While the bulky threats are brought in the back, usually Rillaboom for fake out support and priority damage, Dragonite for speed control with Tailwind, and still strong damage with Scale Shot, or Ursaluna, again for strong bulk and possible priority damage. Leonard also mentioned that leading Mouse Hold with Super Fang and Gholdengo's Make It Rain can deal huge damage early, and then the bulky threats can clean up in the late game after damage has already been done. The team overall is very flexible, and from my own experience using it, I did find the double priority damage from Rillaboom and Ursaluna to be really big in endgames, and found myself using Dragonite less on the team since I didn't see as many Dondozos. So what's the matchup like? Both of these teams have a lot of ghost and normal types, meaning there's a lot of room for moves to be completely neutralized due to switches, terras, redirection, or Zoroark illusions. The mind games will play a significant role here. Wolf's team lends more towards immediate offense, with Life Orb Terra Normal Blood Moon, Prankster Tailwind, and Mind's Eye. This attack will KO all of Leonard's Pokemon, aside from multi-skilled Dragonite, and actually his own Blood Moon thanks to the Assault Vest. However, this is still a very threatening option from Wolf. They do share 3 Pokemon in Gholdengo, Ursaluna, and Dragonite, giving this set even more mind games with possible speed ties. Leonard will have to either make some hard calls as to where Zoroark is, or make incredibly safe plays that somehow cover for its possibility while determining where it is and not losing too much momentum. Setup is also much harder to get off for Leonard with that immediate offense from Wolf, meaning Leonard will likely lean into his Super Fang game plan to match the immediate offense. Both players are likely to bring their own Ursaluna, as it's a strong pick with strong stats, and it can hit the ghost types with its normal attacks, and it threatens Gholdengo with Earth Power. Gholdengo is also likely on both sides, as Leonard's can survive in Earth Power thanks to Friendguard Mouse Hold, and deal huge damage to Whimsicott, Ursaluna, Zoroark, and Dragonite. Annihilape is another solid bring for Leonard, as its speed tier is great and it can take advantage of Intimidate or Icy Winds for Defiant boosts. However, facing down a Hisuian Zoroark, which is normal and Ghost, while Annihilape has only fighting and ghost attacks, with Annihilape and Zoroark, Annihilape just has no chance of winning. Zoroark, Ursaluna, Gholdengo, and Whimsicott are all likely for Wolf. Whimsicott or Zoroark are needed for speed control, as his Ursaluna is slower than Leonard's Annihilape and Gholdengo. Incineroar seems less likely into this match, as even with a Mirror Herb boost from triggering Annihilape's Defiant, it still has a poor matchup into Annihilate, and Dragonite only sees Ursaluna as a low kick target, and Scale Shot could spell disaster if hitting into an Annihilate, setting it up. I hesitate to completely rule out any option from either team in this best of 3 set, as both teams are quite flexible. And with the level of mind games, any Pokemon could come as an adjustment, but I would say that these are most likely for Wolfe. As for Leonard, he's also incredibly likely to bring Mousehold, Gholdengo, Rillaboom, and Ursaluna to most of his games. Let's jump into game 1. We see Leonard lead Mousehold Gholdengo, while Wolfe leads Ursaluna and Gholdengo. At least, that's what Leonard sees, but the Ursaluna is actually Zoroark in disguise. It's likely Leonard will go for his Super Fang Make It Rain combo to try and pick up Ursaluna right away. Wolfe needs to secure speed control and will likely just go for Icy Wind with Zoroark to allow his Gholdengo to move first, and KO the opposing Gholdengo with a Shadow Ball or set up with a Nasty Plot. The Shadow Ball is riskier as Leonard could go for Follow Me, which would tank a Blood Moon if this was Ursaluna, thanks to the Focus Sash, and then be immune to the Shadow Ball. Both players make their likely plays, as Mousehold whiffs its Super Fang into Zoroark, while Zoroark lands Icy Wind into both of Leonard's Pokemon, lowering their speed. Wolfe's Gholdengo sets up a Nasty Plot, as Leonard responds with a Make It Rain, bringing Zoroark to its Focus Sash, and crits Wolfe's Gholdengo, leaving it at 47%. Right off the gate in turn 2, Wolfe is very far ahead in this match. He has the speed advantage thanks to that Icy Wind, and his Gholdengo is set up at +2, making his side of the board incredibly threatening, while Leonard's Gholdengo is at -1 special attack, and Mousehold's Focus Sash has been broken. Leonard really has no offensive pressure at all and needs to reposition. Mousehold can still add value with Friend Guard, so he protects it to keep Friend Guard online for at least one more turn afterwards. He locks in a switch from Gholdengo into Ursaluna. With its Assault Vest and the Friend Guard, it will survive this +2 Make It Rain, and possibly 2 Make It Rains after Gholdengo's special attack drop. Wolfe on the other hand wants to keep up his pressure. He locks in Bitter Malice into Gholdengo and Make It Rain with his own. Make It Rain will KO almost anything on Leonard's side, and Bitter Malice with Make It Rain will take out Leonard's Gholdengo for sure. Even if Leonard does go for Follow Me and Shadow Ball, the Bitter Malice will whiff, but the Make It Rain will deal huge damage, making it a valuable trade-off, and this Bitter Malice will cover for a switch into something like Rillaboom or Dragonite as well. Gholdengo swaps out for Ursaluna, while Mousehold protects. The Bitter Malice does no damage into the Ursaluna as it's immune, while it takes just over half of its health to the Make It Rain. Moving into turn 3, it still looks like Wolfe is on top here. He could easily go for another Icy Wind and Make It Rain. That combo would likely secure a KO on Ursaluna, as a super effective Icy Wind should bring it into range for the Make It Rain, even through the Friend Guard. But this Ursaluna, as mentioned, is holding an Assault Vest. Although that extra bulk won't allow it to survive this combo, it does mean that it's running Vacuum Wave. With Priority and Mind's Eye, it can hit both of these ghost types for super effective fighting damage. Zoroark would faint at this point, being at just 1 HP, and Gholdengo might go down depending on its investments. This makes the double spread attack from Wolfe risky, as it's unlikely he'll get both attacks off, and could easily just lose Zoroark. He still opts to lock in the Make It Rain, giving some insight that he is confident his Gholdengo will survive a Vacuum Wave at this HP. He swaps Zoroark out for Whimsicott, as it resists fighting, and his other Pokemon Ursaluna in the back is also weak to fighting, so it doesn't want to eat a Vacuum Wave for free. Leonard makes the call that Wolfe will protect or swap out Zoroark to keep it safe, and locks in Vacuum Wave into Gholdengo for guaranteed damage. He also likely clicks Beat Up with Mousehold to try and pick up the KO on Zoroark, having it just at 1 HP. Zoroark swaps out for Whimsicott as Gholdengo eats the Vacuum Wave, leaving it at 12%. Gholdengo moves next and takes out Mousehold with Make It Rain, while Ursaluna survives at less than 5% HP. Leonard brings Gholdengo back in for the fallen Mousehold. Wolfe's Gholdengo is back at neutral special attack, and Leonard no longer has any speed drops on board. With Wolfe's being at such low HP, it's in range of another Vacuum Wave here, giving Leonard significant pressure, locking down that slot. But Wolfe does have Prankster Tailwind, which could swing the speed advantage back in his favor. Even if Wolfe were to go for a Tailwind, however, with Gholdengo, it would still fall to that Vacuum Wave, as mentioned, since it's a priority move, and it would leave Whimsicott vulnerable to Make It Rain. This could also give Leonard's Gholdengo the opportunity to set up. Wolfe needs to play defensively to get around these threats, and he has the perfect way to do this. He commits Terra Fire on Whimsicott to ensure it will live and Make It Rain, and clicks Moonblast into Ursaluna to finish it off. In the meantime, he protects Gholdengo to block the Vacuum Wave pressure. Leonard has an easier play of clicking Vacuum Wave into Gholdengo to cover for its switching, while setting up with his own Gholdengo to make his late game stronger, and cover for the potential Fire Terra from Whimsicott. Whimsicott tears into fire as Gholdengo protects, blocking the Vacuum Wave from Ursaluna. Leonard's Gholdengo gets off its Nasty Plot. Whimsicott finishes off Ursaluna with a Moonblast, Leonard brings in Annihilate for the fallen Ursaluna. Leonard's Gholdengo got off its nasty plot before Whimsicott's Moonblast, meaning, as we suspected, Wolfe's Whimsicott is heavily invested in bulk, even foregoing a lot of speed, as it undersped Gholdengo. Bringing the game down to a 2v4, it's incredibly difficult for Leonard to come back at this point in the game. With Zoroark being a normal ghost type, and Annihilate only having ghost and fighting attacks, if Wolfe can remove Leonard's Gholdengo, the game is guaranteed for him as Annihilate just can't touch Zoroark. Wolfe locks in Tailwind to gain speed control, and Shadow Balls into Gholdengo as that's his primary threat. Leonard does what he can to gain an edge, but he knows that he needs his Gholdengo alive. Neither player makes any hard reads as Tailwind goes off, and Leonard's Gholdengo protects, blocking Wolfe's Shadow Ball. Annihilate picks up Wolfe's Gholdengo with a Rage Fist, as Wolfe brings in his own Ursaluna. Wolfe still has the advantage here, as Gholdengo can't reliably protect this turn, and it will fall to an Earth Power. With no attack boosts on Annihilate, Ursaluna will not fall to a single Drain Punch. And even in a worst case scenario of a double protect from Leonard, Wolfe can still take it out the following turn. Wolfe locks in Earth Power into Gholdengo, and goes for Moonblast into it as well, hoping to cover for the possibility of a Terra Water from Gholdengo, which would allow it to survive the Earth Power, but at this range it likely wouldn't survive an Earth Power and Moonblast. Leonard knows both his Pokemon are slower right now thanks to Wolfe's Tailwind, and the only way to win is by keeping Gholdengo alive, so he attempts a double protect and Drain Punches Ursaluna. Leonard gets the double protect on Gholdengo, blocking both the Moonblast and Earth Power. Annihilate's Drain Punch hits Ursaluna for just over half, meaning it's a likely 2-hit knockout. Wolfe can repeat the same thing here, doubling up into Gholdengo to secure a KO. Leonard hasn't Terra'd still, and again he could Terra Water with Gholdengo to remove its ground weakness, but as mentioned, a neutral Earth Power and Moonblast will still likely pick up the KO. Leonard realizes that still his only way out of this situation is to get a triple protect while finishing off the Ursaluna, so that's what he goes for. Leonard goes for protect for a third time in a row, but it fails. We see Gholdengo fall to the Moonblast Earth Power double up, as Annihilate KOs Ursaluna with another Drain Punch. Wolfe brings in Zoroark as his last Pokemon. Even with Zoroark at just 1 HP, Wolfe has the game guaranteed, as it can 1v1 the Annihilate since Annihilate just can't deal any damage to it. Despite knowing the game is over, Leonard plays it out, likely using this time to prepare himself for the next game in the set. Wolfe is easily able to close out the game with Fake Tears and 2 Bitter Malices taking down Annihilate. What can we learn from game 1? Well, we saw the huge advantage that Wolfe gained on turn 1 as Leonard's Super Fang whiffed into the disguised Zoroark. And as mentioned, this is a big part of Wolfe's game plan with the Zoroark, as having turn 1 go completely awry for Leonard meant his Gholdengo was left at -1 special attack, and he didn't really get a lot of damage on board with that play he made. Leonard, however, still played to his outs, knowing that he needed that triple protect in the endgame. We already discussed why he didn't Terra Water his Gholdengo against that Earth Power from Ursaluna, as the double up from Moonblast and Earth Power would likely just take it out anyways. Wolfe could just go for the same game plan since it won him game 1, however Leonard is likely expecting the Zoroark at this point. As we discussed when going over the game plans with Wolfe's team, he often switches things up game 2, either not bringing Zoroark or disguising it as a different Pokemon to keep the opponent on their toes. And that's exactly what Wolfe does, as he changes his lead slightly. This time he brings Incineroar next to Zoroark, which is again disguised as Ursaluna. Leonard also makes an adjustment as he realizes the last game he was on the back foot almost the whole time, so this time he leads his own Ursaluna next to Mousehold. Leonard again has a difficult opener as he needs to decide if he will predict that Ursaluna is actually Ursaluna or if it's Zoroark. This time Wolfe also has Fake Out pressure from Incineroar, which can easily lock down Leonard's Ursaluna since it doesn't have any way around it. Along with a Fake Out from Incineroar, Wolfe can gain some speed control with an Icy Wind. Leonard is quite out of position, and switching out Ursaluna is a decently likely scenario to avoid this Fake Out pressure. He decides to switch it out for Gholdengo, which will resist a normal move from Ursaluna and be immune to the Fake Out pressure. And it can threaten Ursaluna with a Make It Rain the following turn, since it'll be faster. Fake Out into Mousehold is unlikely since it has Protect and a possible Terra Ghost, just making it less threatening overall. Leonard opts to again go for Super Fang into Ursaluna, banking that this is Ursaluna and not Zoroark, which will do enough for a neutral Make It Rain to take it out next turn. Leonard's Ursaluna swaps out for Gholdengo, while Mousehold whiffs the Super Fang into the disguised Zoroark. Again, Icy Wind connects into Gholdengo and Mousehold, while Incineroar, instead of going for Fake Out, goes for a Flare Blitz into Mousehold, dealing about 70%. Wolfe gained some momentum with the Icy Wind and getting significant damage on Mousehold. It could threaten Gholdengo with a Bitter Malice, but again, Follow Me from Mousehold just makes that a very risky play. Even if Gholdengo is safe this turn, it will be slower than whatever Wolfe has in the back thanks to the speed drop. So Leonard's Gholdengo could bring Zoroark to its Focus Sash, but it doesn't threaten Incineroar much at all. However, any damage Leonard can rack up will pay off big time later. Even without the speed advantage, with priority from Rillaboom and Ursaluna in the back, he can move first and pick up the KOs in the endgame. He realizes he needs to get some more damage on board, so he opts to go for Follow Me on Mouse Hold, while Zoroark fires off another Icy Wind, connecting with both targets. Incineroar's knockoff finishes off Mouse Hold, but it keeps Gholdengo safe to fire off and make it rain. Leonard brings in Rillaboom for the fallen Mouse Hold. With Rillaboom on board, Zoroark is threatened by a Grassy Glide. With Fake Out pressure into Incineroar as well, it's possible Wolfe protects Zoroark from the Grassy Glide, while Leonard flinches Incineroar, which would give Gholdengo a turn to set up. However, with the speed drops and a special attack drop on Gholdengo, Leonard makes the call to switch it out for Ursaluna, resetting all those stat drops. It brings more offensive pressure on board, and brings priority pressure. And it can tank attacks that Wolfe would threaten Gholdengo with, like Bitter Malice, Knockoff, or Flare Blitz. He also decides to Terrastalize Rillaboom here, as he would gain little value from Terra-ing any of his other Pokemon. This gives it a resistance to the Fire and Ice attacks on the board currently. He forgoes a Grassy Glide or Fake Out, recognizing that he needs to remove Incineroar to start making progress, and locks in High Horsepower. Wolfe decides not to protect, banking that Leonard will not go for a Grassy Glide, and he goes for Bitter Malice into Rillaboom. Perhaps he figured even if Zoroark does go down to a Grassy Glide, at this point it served its purpose of gaining some speed control, and he can keep up momentum with the safe switch that comes after a KO. Gholdengo swaps out for Ursaluna as Rillaboom terastalizes to fire. Bitter Malice hits Rillaboom, dealing about 45% and lowering its attack. Incineroar moves next, knocking off Ursaluna's item, dealing about 20%. Rillaboom moves last and misses its High Horsepower into Incineroar, dealing no damage for the turn. Interesting to note that Wolfe's Incineroar moved before Rillaboom, meaning it has significant speed investment. At this point it seems all over for Leonard. His Ursaluna's bulk has been hampered without its item, Rillaboom is at half health, at -1 attack, and he just missed his High Horsepower. And he only has a damaged Gholdengo in the back, while Wolfe still has 4 Pokemon. But he doesn't give up. Although the current situation is not in his favor, if Wolfe brought Whimsicott as his 4th Pokemon, really all of Wolfe's damage is in his Ursaluna. And with super effective priority attacks, from Vacuum Wave and Grassy Glide, Leonard can still dig himself out of this situation. He locks in Grassy Glide this time into Zoroark, needing to make progress in the match. He also locks in Earth Power into Incineroar, again needing to make progress, and this Earth Power will surely KO it at this range. Wolfe opts not to protect Zoroark again, likely wanting that free switch, while he goes for Parting Shot into Ursaluna to weaken it. Rillaboom finishes off Zoroark with Grassy Glide, then Incineroar lands Parting Shot into Ursaluna. Wolfe switches it out for Whimsicott, which easily resists the Earth Power. Wolfe brings in his own Ursaluna for the fallen Zoroark. Leonard really needs to make some perfect plays to position out of this. Wolfe has huge offensive pressure, and with Terra available on Ursaluna, and Fake Tears or Tailwind from Whimsicott, he can quickly take over the game. He's all but guaranteed to use Terra Normal, but the question is, what move does he go for? And what does he do with Whimsicott? He could go for a Fake Tears and Blood Moon into Leonard's Ursaluna for a KO, which could work, but a switch into Gholdengo would leave that play pretty weak. An Earth Power into Rillaboom would take it out, and would cover for Rillaboom switching into Gholdengo, but it would leave Ursaluna vulnerable to a Blood Moon from Leonard's Ursaluna. Even at -1 special attack from the Parting Shot, that'll still deal big damage. Wolfe opts not to risk a Fake Tears with the threat of Gholdengo switching in and making it do nothing, and locks in Hyper Voice to cover both slots. And he goes from Moonblast into Leonard's Ursaluna. Leonard needs his Ursaluna alive, as it can deal enough damage to clean up Incineroar and Whimsicott, but he can't really go toe-to-toe with Wolfe's Ursaluna since it's faster and it doesn't have its Assault Vest. He swaps it for Gholdengo, which will resist a normal attack, and will resist Moonblast, and is immune to Fake Tears. Leonard can't swap both Pokemon, so he just attacks with Rillaboom. Wood Hammer with the Grassy Terrain boost, Meadow Plate boost, and max attack will still deal big damage even at -1. Ursaluna swaps out for Gholdengo, as Wolfe's Ursaluna terras to normal. Whimsicott lands Moonblast into Gholdengo, then Rillaboom lands its Wood Hammer into Ursaluna, dealing 60%. Ursaluna's Hyper Voice chunks Gholdengo, but it survives while it takes out Rillaboom. Leonard then brings Ursaluna back in. Wolfe here needs to gain speed control, otherwise Gholdengo could just clean up the game with priority support from Ursaluna. However, he protects Ursaluna and goes for Moonblast with Whimsicott instead of going for Tailwind. The protect here on Ursaluna is great, as it gives Ursaluna some Grassy Terrain recovery, and it means it will almost guaranteed survive a Vacuum Wave the following turn. But not securing speed control with Whimsicott was definitely a blunder, and we'll see why soon. Leonard likely expects the protect from Wolfe's Ursaluna, again as he wants it out of range from a Vacuum Wave, so he locks in Blood Moon into Whimsicott, while going for Nasty Plot on Gholdengo. Wolfe's Ursaluna protects as Gholdengo gets off its Nasty Plot. Then Whimsicott lands its Moonblast into Ursaluna, while Blood Moon picks up the one-hit knockout on Whimsicott. Wolfe then brings in Incineroar, his last Pokemon, bringing this game to a 2v2. Without the speed control from Tailwind, Gholdengo can easily clean up this game as it's the fastest Pokemon on the board. Wolfe's Ursaluna can't reliably protect since it just did, and Fake Out won't work into the Ghost-type Gholdengo. Wolfe could Fake Out Ursaluna, but a Make It Rain will pick up the KO on his own Ursaluna, and deal big damage to Incineroar. If Wolfe is using Fake Out into Ursaluna, that means he isn't pressuring Gholdengo with his Incineroar at all. He opts to go for Knockoff into Gholdengo, hoping to survive the Make It Rain, and get the KO with his faster Ursaluna into Leonard's slower Ursaluna. Wolfe ends up getting a double protect on his own Ursaluna, helping to stall for more grassy terrain recovery, keep it alive, and hopefully allow Incineroar to take out Leonard's Gholdengo. But Leonard went for a Vacuum Wave into his Incineroar. This extra damage guarantees Gholdengo will pick up the KO with its +2 Make It Rain. This may have seemed risky, as Leonard obviously needs to pick up the KO on Wolfe's Ursaluna, but the Make It Rain at +2 is guaranteed to do that even if it was at full HP, so the extra damage into it is not necessary. The following turn, Wolfe has no way out, and Ursaluna falls to a Vacuum Wave and Make It Rain. So what did we learn from Game 2? Well, Leonard made a huge comeback, as the same turn 1 scenario played out with the Super Fang Whiff into the disguised Zoroark, and Leonard was a bit out of position with his own Ursaluna, needing to switch it out. Wolfe did make a misplay on turn 6, not going for that Tailwind. While he protected his own Ursaluna to gain that grassy terrain recovery, which was a very solid play, not securing the Tailwind that turn and allowing Whimsicott to fall means that Gholdengo was the fastest Pokemon and it could just secure the game afterwards. Perhaps Wolfe was expecting Whimsicott to survive the Blood Moon from Leonard's Ursaluna, but unfortunately it just wasn't bulky enough. Even if he secured the Tailwind that turn and didn't get that little extra chip with Moonblast, his Gholdengo and Incineroar would have been faster than both of Leonard's Pokemon, allowing Incineroar to pick up the KO on Gholdengo and his own Ursaluna to pick up the KO on Leonard's. This shows that even the best players sometimes can make slight misplays in the endgame, and just one misplayed turn can completely swing the tide of a match. However, this doesn't take anything away from how Leonard played. Again, turn 1 for Leonard is incredibly difficult with Zoroark, and the way that Leonard's team is built to use a lot of normal ghost and fighting moves. So the fact that Leonard was able to make any sort of comeback from that unfortunate turn 1 really puts a lot of credit towards him. The set isn't over, so let's move into Game 3. Leonard again leads Gholdengo and Mousehold like he did in Game 1, while Wolfe changes things up quite a bit by leading Incineroar and Dragonite. This time it actually is Dragonite, and he hasn't led Zoroark this time. With Fake Out pressure from Incineroar and knock off or Flare Blitz into Gholdengo, this is a very threatening lead for Leonard to deal with. The Dragonite also threatens damage into Mousehold. In the meantime, Dragonite could also again be Zoroark. Leonard could have to consider dozens of options as to what Wolfe might do, with Incineroar, whether it's actually Dragonite or Zoroark, but he just protects both Pokemon as that's his best play. Keeping both of them safe is the best play because 1, it will burn the Fake Out pressure, and it will allow Leonard to see if this Dragonite really is a Dragonite by what move it goes for. The only move Dragonite and Zoroark share is Protect, and their speed tiers are much different. So even if Dragonite goes for Protect, Leonard will be able to tell if it's Zoroark or not based on the Protect turn order, if it goes before his Gholdengo or after it. Mousehold and Gholdengo both go for Protect, while Dragonite uses Scale Shot, confirming for Leonard that it is Dragonite, and we see it targeted Mousehold, while Incineroar went for Knockoff into Gholdengo. We can see Leonard's expression of relief that this is in fact Dragonite and not Zoroark for once. Now, with that information, Leonard does have an advantage here, as both of his Pokemon are faster than both of Wolfe's, and he likely has enough offense to remove the Dragonite with a Super Fang and Make It Rain. This would also chip Incineroar for some damage, making it a decent play. But since Dragonite didn't protect last turn, it can this turn. And with the speed advantage in Leonard's favor, the Protect is pretty likely here. Wolfe could go on the offense with both Pokemon, but that's risky as Dragonite could just fall to that aforementioned Super Fang and Make It Rain. He opts to protect Dragonite and try to remove Gholdengo with a Flare Blitz. Leonard, expecting the Protect, goes for the Follow Me and Nasty Plot on Gholdengo to set up. Dragonite protects and Mousehold uses Follow Me. Gholdengo gets off its Nasty Plot, while the redirected Flare Blitz leaves Mousehold at about 40%. Funny that the Nasty Plot does set off Incineroar's Mirror Herb, which I'm sure will be very impactful for Incineroar to have +2 special attack. Leonard is firmly in the driver's seat now. With a setup Gholdengo, Mousehold still alive facing down Wolfe's slower Pokemon, there's not much Wolfe can do to mitigate this oncoming damage. Leonard again could Super Fang Dragonite and Make It Rain for the guaranteed KO, as Multi-Scale will reduce an attack's damage significantly, so hitting it first with Mousehold will remove the Multi-Scale, securing the KO from Gholdengo. But Leonard has a better play, which he commits to. He locks in Beat Up over Super Fang, Although beat up will do almost no damage, he's confident that the +2 Make It Rain will pick up the one-hit KO, provided the multi-scale is broken. Going for the beat up, which has 100% accuracy over Super Fang's 90%, secures this play. Wolfe has very few options. Switching into any of his other Pokemon will be a death sentence for them. So he goes for knockoff into Gholdengo and attempts a scale shot into Maushold. Leonard also commits Terra Water on Gholdengo, which will allow it to survive whatever attack Incineroar has in store for it. Beat up connects with Dragonite, dealing just 13 damage, which is more than enough for the Make It Rain to pick up the KO, while dealing 50% to Incineroar. The knockoff hits Gholdengo, removing the Life Orb, leaving it at 55%. Wolfe brings in Ursaluna, which is actually Zoroark. Leonard's position is only better here than it was last turn. Even a +1 Make It Rain will KO a purely offensive Ursaluna Blood Moon. Not only are Leonard's Pokemon still faster, but even Incineroar can't KO Gholdengo with a knockoff or Flare Blitz to retaliate if he wanted to. A Protect from Wolfe's Ursaluna is likely to keep it alive from the Make It Rain, and possibly land a Parting Shot to pivot Incineroar out to reposition. But if Wolfe goes for this, a Super Fang plus Make It Rain into Incineroar will still pick up the KO, allowing Maushold to Super Fang Ursaluna the next turn, ensuring that the neutral special attack Make It Rain picks it up then. This, however, was all from Leonard's perspective, as again this is actually Zoroark. If Leonard realizes this, perhaps a beat up into it and Make It Rain would be the best play. It covers the Zoroark possibility, and still chunks Incineroar, and will keep Gholdengo alive if that slot protects. Leonard, however, decides to go for Super Fang rather than beat up, hoping to secure more damage, banking that it again is Ursaluna. Zoroark goes for Protect, which blocks a Super Fang from Maushold. Gholdengo fires off another Make It Rain, leaving Incineroar at 6%. Incineroar is able to finish off Maushold with Flare Blitz, KOing itself in the process. Both players bring in Ursaluna Blood Moon. This may seem like an impossible guessing game for Leonard as to which Pokemon is Zoroark, since they both look like Ursaluna. But if anyone knows how niche Pokemon mechanics work, it's him. Again, we see his enthusiastic reaction that he does know immediately which one is Zoroark. If Zoroark is sent out last, it will not have its disguise up, as there's nothing left to disguise as, meaning that the Ursaluna that just came out is in fact the real one, as if it was Zoroark, it would display itself as Zoroark being the last Pokemon sent out. With Maushold gone and Gholdengo weakened, Wolfe has a speed advantage here, as he can fire off an Icy Wind with Zoroark, allowing his Ursaluna to move first. Wolfe has not yet spent his Terra, and it only makes sense that he will use it on his Blood Moon. He goes for the Icy Wind and Blood Moon into Leonard's Ursaluna, banking that Gholdengo will protect or switch. Leonard does not go for a Vacuum Wave, likely hoping to land its own Blood Moon into Wolfe's Ursaluna, although it would have been a decent play to break the Focus Sash on Zoroark that just protected. He also launches another Make It Rain from Gholdengo. By attacking with both Pokemon, he ensures that at least one will survive and get damage in, as Wolfe is unable to pick up both KOs this turn. Icy Wind connects with both targets, and Wolfe's Blood Moon picks up the KO on Leonard's Ursaluna. Gholdengo moves last, hitting both Pokemon very hard with his neutral Make It Rain, and he brings in his last Pokemon, Rillaboom. Rillaboom is likely the last Pokemon Wolfe wanted to see come out from Leonard, as it secures the game for him. With 5 turns of Priority Grassy Glide now available, it can move before both of Wolfe's Pokemon and finish them off. Rather than play guessing games now with Protects, he locks in Fake Out into Ursaluna and Make It Rain with Gholdengo. Wolfe's Zoroark protects while Rillaboom flinches Ursaluna, preventing it from moving as it goes down to Gholdengo's Make It Rain. On this last turn, Rillaboom finishes off Zoroark with a Grassy Glide, winning Leonard the set and allowing him to advance to the top 4. So what did we learn from Game 3? We see Wolfe completely adjusted his lead this time, bringing Dragonite, which he didn't bring in either of the first 2 games. I can think of a couple reasons as to why he would bring this. The first reason is perhaps he doesn't know how bulky Leonard's Maushold is, and expected that a Scale Shot would likely pick it up. We also saw that he didn't go for Tailwind turn 1 while both of Leonard's Pokemon protected. Had he gone for the Tailwind, he would have had a huge advantage gaining the speed control. But if he expected the Scale Shot to pick up the Maushold, perhaps that was the safer play, trying to get damage in earlier. As from Leonard's adjustment, we see he identified Annihilate was just not it for this set, as he didn't bring it in games 2 or 3. Speed control was the name of the game for Wolfe, and he wasn't able to secure it in games 2 or 3, which led to Leonard's win both times. The priority attacks played a huge role in circumventing the speed control from Wolfe, as we saw the Vacuum Wave in game 2 deal enough damage to Incineroar for Gholdengo to take it out, and we saw Grassy Glide pressure from Rillaboom in both games 2 and 3 make a huge difference into his game plan against Wolfe. Both players still played incredibly well, and both teams were quite unique, and with all the normal ghost and fighting types, this created a very fun dynamic for this match. Make sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more of this type of content. I'd like to give a shout out to all the patrons for supporting the channel, and thank you for watching.